you came to Christmas worship, we read from Luke 2, probably, right? Because that's the classic one where the angels come to the shepherds and they say, "Behold, I bring you good news." Or if you're King Jamesy, then it's glad tidings. But either way, it's the Greek word there is the same one that gets translated gospel throughout much of the New Testament. And it's this idea of good news. But that word is really, really loaded in the first century. Because, well, the way that Luke starts off chapter 2, the story of, is in the days of Caesar Augustus. Remember that? Well, when he says that, he's reminding the audience that the first time they heard this word good news used was at the announcement of Caesar Augustus's birth. They sent messengers throughout the whole world saying, there's going to be peace and prosperity for another generation because we have a new emperor is born. A new king is born. And so when the angel comes to these lowly shepherds in the middle of nowhere and says, we've got good news. This good news isn't just for the people who benefit from the Roman power structures. It isn't just for the people who are well off, who are already strong, and can handle whatever the day brings. This is good news for everyone, no matter where you're at. Because this is not good news about someone who sits on a throne of gold. This is good news about someone who sits on the throne of our hearts. And that word good news also had a lot of meaning 2 chapters later in Luke 4. Jesus pulls open the Isaiah scroll and says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach good news to the poor. Same word. And he's saying, and then he says, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. He's saying, I'm the Messiah that you've been waiting for. So when the angel comes and says, good news, it's this really big idea that we can't miss out on. The fact is, the good news is not a set of ideas, it's not a set of rules, it's a person. And he's why we're here. In a feed box, in a barn, in a backwater town, he was born, a baby boy, too small to wear his crown, but he was king all the same. Angels called him by name. This little nobody in rags was good news. In a pasture not so far from that backwater town, they were standing by their sheep when the message came around. But the kinds of kings that carry swords, well, they don't rule you anymore. And so for flocks of nobodies, that's good news. And the news was good for the innkeeper, and the news was good for those who couldn't earn their keep. And the news meant that no army could hold back their hope. The news is good. The news is good. The news is good. In the high, lofty capital, over that backwater town. The priest, he prayed for the day they could throw their captors down. But as those very words were spoken, his prison door was flying open, just 'cause nobody's prepared for good news. And the news is good for the lions, and the news is good for all those flocks of wandering lambs. And the news meant that their years of hoping weren't in vain.